My name is Helen Carter, and at 61 years old, I have learned that silence can be both a comfort and a warning. I live in Maple Ridge, Wisconsin, a town where winter snow sits quietly on rooftops, where mornings are slow, and where small businesses still survive because neighbors trust each other. For most of my life, I believed I was one of those neighbors people could trust. Maybe I still am. Maybe that was always the problem. For 35 years, I built something from nothing. A tiny hardware shop that grew into Carter Tools and Lumber, a respected local supplier in Rickshaw County. Every aisle, every customer I helped, every late-night restock, every sheet of lumber I carried on my shoulder, it was all a piece of me. People in Maple Ridge often said, "Helen, you work like you're building an empire," and I always smiled, because I wasn't building an empire. I was building a future for one person, my daughter, Sienna. Sienna was the one bright, warm, undeniable piece of my world. I raised her alone after her father passed away. Every school project, every birthday, every milestone. I was there with open arms, a proud smile, and whatever she needed. She was always beautiful, smart, ambitious, and somehow always wanting just a little more. When she graduated, I bought her a used car. When she moved out, I helped her furnish her apartment. When she landed her first job, I hosted a celebration dinner. Every accomplishment she had, I treated it like it was my own. Because in many ways it was. She was my life's work just as much as my business was. At least, that's what I believed. The truth was quieter. More painful. And I didn't see it, not then. To me, we were close. To her, maybe I was a convenience. A safety net. A resource. But I ignored those thoughts because love, especially a mother's love, always looks for the best in the child she raised. Back then, before everything shattered, my days were simple. I woke up early, made coffee, handled inventory orders, balanced the books, and spent weekends visiting Sienna or helping her plan the next phase of her life, which always happened to involve something expensive. I never questioned it. I never doubted her. And I never imagined that one day, my entire life would be torn apart by the very person I built everything for. Because the real story, the storm, didn't begin with anger. It didn't begin with lies. It didn't even begin with betrayal. It began with a wedding. A beautiful, grand, breathtaking wedding. One that I paid for with every ounce of pride a mother could have. And it began with a truth that stayed hidden for 45 days, until one phone call turned my entire world upside down. For months leading up to Sienna's wedding, my life became one long, exhausting checklist. Every morning started with vendor calls, budget adjustments, receipts, emails, and last-minute changes that always seemed to cost more than they should. But I never complained. Not once. Because this was my daughter's big day, the day she had dreamed about since she was 12 years old. And I wanted to give her everything. I used almost all of my savings, $42,500, to create the kind of ceremony she always imagined. The venue she chose, Lakewood Botanical Hall, was one of the most expensive locations in the area. High ceilings draped with white silk, cascading floral arrangements, glowing lantern paths, and a live jazz band she insisted on. I didn't flinch. I didn't negotiate. I didn't say, "This is too much." I just paid every bill as it came. Because a mother's love doesn't calculate costs. It just gives. Landon Hayes, her soon-to-be husband, made the entire process look even easier. He was polished, well-spoken, always in a tailored suit. A financial advisor, with just enough charm to make everyone feel safe. He thanked me for everything, called me Mom, and helped make decisions as if he truly cared about our family. And I believed him. Every word, every smile. The wedding night became the picture-perfect event everyone dreams of. Nearly 200 guests filled the hall. The jazz band played soft music under warm amber lights. People toasted to love, danced across the polished wood floors, and told me again and again how lucky Sienna was. I looked at her, dressed in a stunning lace gown, and felt a kind of pride only a parent can understand, the pride of watching your child step into a new life. Nothing was missing. Nothing felt wrong. Nothing hinted at the truth hidden behind the perfect smiles. Our photographer, Zoe Mitchell, moved through the crowd with quiet confidence, capturing every moment. I remember watching her adjust her lens, angle herself just right to catch the sparkle in Sienna's eyes. She was good, talented, precise. Sienna chose her after 3 weeks of research and comparing portfolios. I paid the full fee up front without hesitation. When the ceremony ended and the lights dimmed, I walked to the parking lot with my heels in my hand, exhausted but so full of joy that I barely noticed the cold Wisconsin air biting my skin. My daughter was married. My work was done. My heart was full. I didn't know, not then, not that night, not for the next 45 days. That behind all the beauty, behind the celebrations, behind Landon's perfect smile, a nightmare was waiting. A nightmare captured in photographs. A nightmare Zoe would discover by accident. A nightmare that would make her call me in panic, changing everything I believed about my daughter's marriage, and about my daughter herself. 45 days after the wedding, life had finally returned to its quiet rhythm. It was a cold Tuesday morning in Maple Ridge. Snow dusted the porch, the coffee machine hummed softly, and the house felt unusually peaceful. I wrapped a shawl around my shoulders, sat at the kitchen table, and began sorting through Carter tools and lumber invoices like I had done 1,000 mornings before. Nothing felt strange. Nothing felt wrong. It was the kind of morning where you don't expect your life to change. And then my phone rang. I glanced at the screen. Zoe Mitchell. Wedding photographer. My first thought was simple. Maybe she needed my mailing address to send the printed album. But the moment I answered, I knew something was terribly wrong. Her voice was trembling. Mrs. Carter. It's Zoe. Yes, dear? Is everything okay? A shaky breath. Then another. As if she had been crying. No, she whispered. Something happened. I found something. And I don't want to say it over the phone. My heartbeat slowed, not in fear yet, but in the way a mother senses danger before she understands it. Zoe, what is it? She inhaled sharply, almost like a sob she was trying to hide. Please, she said. Please come to my studio. Alone. Is Sienna okay? I asked, suddenly alert. Don't tell her, Zoe blurted out immediately. Please. Don't tell her you're coming. Don't show her this. Don't mention I called. My fingers tightened around the phone. Zoe, you're scaring me. I know, she whispered. And I'm sorry. But Mrs. Carter, you need to see this yourself. It's serious. Really serious. For a brief moment, the kitchen felt colder. The snow outside looked sharper. The quiet morning changed its shape. What did you find? I asked again. A pause. Then her voice cracked completely. Just, please come. I swear I wouldn't call you like this if it wasn't important. I stood from the table, shakiness building in my knees, a dread forming in my chest even though I had no idea why. I'll be there in 20 minutes, I said. She exhaled, relief or fear, I couldn't tell. Thank you, she whispered. And Mrs. Carter, please hurry. The call ended. For the first time in months, my house did not feel like home. It felt like the prelude to something breaking. Something I had never imagined could break. I grabbed my coat, my keys, my purse, and the last piece of calm left in me. Because deep inside, beneath the confusion and worry, something whispered that I was walking toward a truth I would never be able to unsee. The drive to downtown Maple Ridge felt longer than usual. My hands were cold on the steering wheel, my heart beat louder inside the quiet cabin of the car. I kept replaying Zoe's trembling voice in my mind. Please come alone. Don't tell Sienna. Please hurry. Photographers don't talk like that unless something is deeply wrong. Dangerously wrong. When I pulled into the parking lot outside Mitchell Photo Studio, the sky was gray, low, and heavy, the kind of weather Wisconsin gets right before it snows again. Zoe stood outside the glass door, arms wrapped around herself, pacing anxiously. The moment she saw me, she rushed over. Helen, she breathed, voice still unsteady, thank you for coming. Zoe, just tell me what's going on, I said, stepping inside with her. She locked the studio door behind us, pulled the blinds halfway down, and led me toward her editing desk. Her hands were shaking so badly she could barely move the mouse. I didn't mean to find it, she said quickly, fear tightening her words. I wasn't even editing the wedding album yet. I was cleaning my SD cards, deleting old files, organizing previews, and then she swallowed hard. This popped up. She clicked a folder. Another. And then a thumbnail appeared. My stomach dropped before she even enlarged it. When the image filled the monitor, I felt the ground tilt beneath my feet. It was Landon, wearing the same suit he wore on the wedding day. Same boutonniere. Same hairstyle. But he wasn't with my daughter. He was pressed intimately against a woman I had never seen before. A woman wearing a stylish maroon dress and a wedding ring on her left hand. Their bodies were close. Too close. His hand on her waist. Her fingers brushing the back of his neck. The kind of closeness you don't share with anyone except someone you're already deeply involved with. I leaned in, breath catching painfully in my chest. This can't be real. Zoe clicked through more images. The next photo. The woman's hand on Landon's face. Next. Their foreheads touching. Next. A kiss. A clear, unmistakable kiss. My vision blurred for a moment. My knees nearly buckled. And then Zoe opened the metadata panel. Timestamp. Wedding day. Exactly 1 hour and 25 minutes before the ceremony. GPS location. Behind the venue hall, near the South Garden exit. There was no mistake. No doubt. No way to deny it. This wasn't an affair after the wedding, Zoe whispered. This happened before he said, I do. I slowly reached for the back of the chair to steady myself. How? My voice cracked. How did this end up on your camera? Zoe's face drained of color. I think, she swallowed, I think he grabbed my camera by accident. I remember bumping into him when I was setting up equipment. He must have used it without realizing it wasn't his. She looked at me helplessly. I didn't know. I swear I didn't know. I nodded weakly, unable to breathe properly. Zoe pulled open a drawer and took out a small black flash drive. I saved everything here, she said quietly. I didn't want to send it digitally. I didn't want him or anyone else to intercept it. I felt responsible. I took the flash drive with trembling fingers. For a long moment, I couldn't speak. Not a word. Not a sound. I just stared at the images on that bright studio screen, the clean, sharp pictures of betrayal, and felt a kind of pain that lit a cold fire inside my chest. Zoe placed a gentle hand on my arm. Mrs. Carter. I'm so sorry. I finally exhaled, but the breath came out broken. This, I whispered, still staring at the images. This will destroy her. No, Zoe shook her head softly, voice steadier now. This won't destroy her. This will save her. I closed my eyes. Because deep down, somewhere beneath the shock, humiliation, heartbreak, I knew she was right. This wasn't the end. This was only the beginning. The beginning of a truth that would unravel everything my daughter believed in. Everything I believed in. Everything we had built. Driving home from Zoe's studio felt like moving through a world made of glass. Fragile, silent, cold. I held the flash drive in my coat pocket the entire time, gripping it so tightly my fingers went numb. Those images weren't just proof of betrayal. They were the beginning of a truth I wasn't prepared for. I reached home, hung my coat, and tried to steady my breath. But something inside me kept whispering, "There's more. You just don't know it yet." I went upstairs, opened my laptop, and sat on the edge of my bed. I didn't want to think about Sienna. I didn't want to imagine her reaction, her pain, her life unraveling. But I knew, that if Landon could betray her an hour before the ceremony, then this marriage had never been real. Not emotionally. Not morally. And maybe, not financially. The thought sent a sudden jolt through me. The wedding money. All the cash gifts. All the envelopes we collected at the reception. All the checks guests handed to me personally for safekeeping. They insisted everything go into one wedding fund for their new home. So I opened the online portal of Rickshaw County Bank, intending only to review a business invoice. One wrong click changed everything. My breath froze. On the left side of the page, the bank displayed recently accessed accounts. There, between my business account and my savings, sat an account I had never seen before. Joint Wedding Fund S. Carter and L. Hayes. I clicked it, and my heart slammed against my ribcage. The balance was zero. Completely empty. My stomach twisted as I scrolled downward. Transaction history. plus $31,000, wedding cash gifts, deposited 3 days after the wedding. plus $4,800, checks from family friends. plus $1,700, digital transfers from relatives. $37,500 withdrawn, single transaction. A remaining balance emptied next morning. My hand flew to my mouth. I wasn't breathing. They took it. Every dollar. Every cent. All the money people gave out of love and blessing. Gone. And at the very bottom of the page. Account opened, 5 weeks before the wedding. Opened by Sienna Carter and Landon Hayes. I closed my eyes hard, as if darkness could mute reality. But the truth echoed louder now. Sienna and Landon had planned this. Before vows. Before the ceremony. Before the kiss. Before the flowers. Before the music. Before the entire wedding she made me finance. It wasn't just a marriage. It was a setup. A calculated, strategic financial setup. A scam. I stared at the screen, unable to move, as new memories flooded my mind. Sienna insisting on cash-only gifts. Landon suggesting a single joint account. Their shared smirk when guests handed envelopes. Sienna avoiding specific questions about where the money went. I thought it was normal newlywed excitement. But it wasn't excitement. It was extraction. I felt my throat close. A sharp ache spread through my chest. My arms trembled. I wasn't prepared for this kind of heartbreak. The kind that doesn't just shatter you. It hollows you out from the inside. How could she? My daughter. My only child. I whispered into the empty room. Why, Sienna? Why would you do this to me? But the silence answered back. Because she never saw you as her mother. Only as her safety net. Her provider. Her wallet. And that realization hurt more than anything Zoe showed me. I shut the laptop slowly, my body shaking. The betrayal felt suffocating, like the air had been knocked out of my lungs. The photos revealed the first truth. The bank account revealed the second. And I knew. There was still one more truth I hadn't seen yet. A truth that would cut deeper than both. That night, I didn't sleep. Not even for a minute. I stayed at the kitchen table, elbows pressed into the cool wood, staring at the flash drive Zoe had given me. It sat next to my closed laptop, two small pieces of plastic that carried the weight of my entire world collapsing. Every few minutes, I took a long breath, trying to quiet the shaking in my chest. But no amount of breathing could silence the truth. Landon had betrayed my daughter before the vows. And Sienna, my Sienna, had taken part in a financial scam with him. My stomach churned as the house filled with that late-night silence that feels too sharp, too deep, as if it's waiting for something terrible to happen. I was about to stand up and make tea when I heard a sound. A door opened upstairs. Soft footsteps. Sienna's voice. Laughing. My heart clenched. Laughing? At this hour? I froze in place, listening. She wasn't alone. She was on a call. Her voice floated down the stairs, careless, unfiltered, sharp. Yeah, I know. I know. Trust me, 2 more months and I'll file for divorce. I stopped breathing. Divorce? My hands gripped the edge of the table. She continued, her tone amused, almost proud. Look, after the split, I'll get at least $15,000. Minimum. And honestly, that's the easiest money I've ever made. My entire body went cold. She laughed again, that light, sweet laugh she used when she wanted someone wrapped around her finger. Mom paid for everything, the venue, the dress, the catering. All of it. We barely spent anything. Barely spent anything. Barely. As if I hadn't spent 20 years building that savings. As if $42,500 was pocket change. As if my sacrifices were a joke. I covered my mouth with my hand, choking back a sound that felt like a sob. Sienna's voice dropped lower, but not low enough. Yeah, he knows the plan. Of course he does. Landon's not stupid. We agreed, we collect the cash gifts, play the happy couple for a few months, and then, goodbye. Silence. Then, with brutal honesty. Honestly, I don't even like him. Never did. But we needed a big wedding to make the money worth it. I felt something crack inside me. Not a snap. Not anger. A slow, quiet breaking, the kind that changes a person forever. She sighed dramatically. Mom? She'll never know. She's sweet but clueless. I mean, she's good at running her hardware store, but emotionally, she's easy to manipulate. My vision blurred. My throat tightened. I had to press a hand against my chest to steady myself. Manipulate. Easy to manipulate. My daughter, the child I raised alone, the child I protected, the child I gave every piece of myself to, spoke about me like I was a fool. And not just a fool. A tool. Like I existed only to provide. Only to fund. Only to be used. I had heard enough. I stood silently, slowly, careful not to make a sound. I didn't want her to know I'd heard. Not yet. I wasn't ready. Not until I had a plan. Not until I understood exactly who and what I was dealing with. I walked back into my office, closed the door softly, and leaned my back against it. I let the tears fall, silently, freely, for the first time in years. Not because of Landon, but because of Sienna. My daughter wasn't trapped in a toxic marriage. She was the architect. She was the strategist. She was the betrayal. And in that moment, in the darkness of my office, I realized something painful and undeniable. I hadn't lost my daughter today. I had discovered that I never truly had her. Not the real her. Not the version she kept hidden behind charm, smiles, and carefully chosen words. I wiped my face, stood straight, and whispered to myself. No more. It wasn't anger. It was clarity. The kind a mother reaches only after the deepest wound. The morning light felt harsh when it came through my curtains, brighter than usual, almost accusatory. I stood in front of the bathroom mirror, searching my own reflection for answers. My eyes were swollen, the lines around my mouth deeper, my shoulders heavier. But something else had settled inside me, a firmness, a quiet resolve that had never existed before. Sienna had made her choices. Now it was time for me to make mine. I walked downstairs, poured myself coffee, and opened my laptop with hands that still trembled from the night before. I typed slowly, deliberately, searching for something I had never thought I would need: legal protection from my own child. The words estate lawyer felt bitter on my tongue, but necessary. For the first time in my life, I understood that love without boundaries is not love, it's surrender. The same name kept appearing on my screen: Attorney Colin Harper from Stateview Legal Group, Madison. Experienced, respected, specializing in asset protection and trusts. I dialed the number before I lost courage. A calm receptionist answered, and the moment she asked how she could help, my voice cracked despite my efforts to stay composed. I need to protect my assets from my daughter. There was no surprise in her tone, only quiet professionalism. Attorney Harper is available at 11:30. Can you come in? Yes, I whispered, because saying anything louder might break me again. The drive to Madison felt like traveling between two different lives. Snow covered the rooftops, children waited at bus stops, people walked their dogs. The world seemed normal everywhere except inside my body, where everything felt shattered. When I finally pulled up to the tall glass office building, my fingers shook as I shut off the engine. Inside, Colin greeted me with a firm handshake. His office was clean, organized, the kind of place that made you feel safe enough to tell the truth. He asked me to start wherever I wanted. So I did. I told him everything: the wedding, the photos, the bank account, the missing money, the divorce plan, the overheard conversation, the calculation in my daughter's voice when she described me as easy to manipulate. Every word tasted like ash, but he listened without interrupting. When I finished, he leaned forward slightly, his eyes clear and steady. "You're not fighting your daughter," he said softly. "You're fighting a plan she built. And unless you take action today, she will win." My breath caught, not in fear, but in recognition. He was right. I asked him what I needed to do. He pulled out a folder and slid a document toward me, speaking with the calm certainty of someone who had helped many parents in my position. "You need an irrevocable living trust. Once your assets, your business, your home, your savings, move into this trust, your daughter cannot touch them. She cannot force a sale. She cannot inherit more than you choose. She cannot challenge it in court. This is legal armor, Helen." Armor. I hadn't realized how unprotected I had been until he said the word out loud. I took a slow breath. "And how much does this cost?" $6,400 for full structure, legal filing, transfer of assets, and long-term protection. I thought about the $42,500 I spent on Sienna's wedding, the wedding she used as a financial scheme. I thought about the $31,000 in gifts she had stolen. I thought about every check, every sacrifice, every moment I had mistaken manipulation for love. "It's worth it," I said quietly. "Do it." Colin nodded, immediately pulling up the paperwork. I read every line with a steady hand. No hesitation. No fear. Only clarity. I signed the signature page, and with that single motion, I began reclaiming the life I'd been losing for years. Walking out of the Stateview building into the cold Wisconsin air felt different this time. The world looked sharper, clearer, almost new. I wasn't numb anymore. I wasn't broken. I wasn't confused. I was a woman preparing to protect herself, truly, fully, for the first time. I gripped my keys, exhaled, and whispered into the wind with a strength I didn't know I had. No more, Sienna. Not out of hate. Not out of anger. But out of survival. And for the first time, I wasn't afraid of choosing myself. I spent the next 2 days moving through my home like a ghost, silent but watching everything with new eyes. Every memory of Sienna felt like a bruise, tender, darkening, and painful to touch. Colin had advised me to stay calm until the trust paperwork moved forward, so I did exactly that. My voice softened. My movements slowed. I forced myself to speak gently on the phone with Sienna when she called, pretending nothing was wrong. I agreed to a family dinner when she suggested it. She thought I sounded exhausted. She had no idea I sounded controlled. By Sunday evening, the house was warm, candles lit, dinner simmering on the stove. I laid the table with quiet precision, plates, glasses, napkins. And in front of my seat, I placed a plain manila folder. 8 photographs inside. The truth inside. The doorbell rang exactly at 6. Of course it did. They were always punctual when they wanted something. Sienna walked in first, bright smile, perfect hair, expensive coat. Landon followed behind her, adjusting his tie like a man preparing for a negotiation, not a family meal. They hugged me with arms that felt hollow. I could feel the performance in every gesture. They settled at the table with the ease of people who believed they still had control. Sienna served herself salad, laughing lightly as if the past weeks had been nothing but pleasant newlywed life. Landon complimented the roast chicken like he was trying to charm me into forgetting he had betrayed my daughter, or maybe into forgetting he had used me. After a few minutes of meaningless conversation, Sienna launched into her real intention. "Mom," she said with practiced softness, "Landon and I have been thinking. This house, it's too big for you now. You could sell it, move into something modern and smaller. It would give you a lot of financial comfort. And the market is perfect right now." Landon nodded, adding his well-rehearsed support. "Absolutely. You'd get top dollar. And we could help you manage everything, the sale, the move, everything you need." I watched both of them quietly, letting their words float across the table like smoke. Sienna placed her hand on mine, her eyes wide in concern. "We just want what's best for you. We want you to be taken care of." Taken care of. That phrase. The one she used when she wanted access to my money without asking directly. I pulled my hand away gently, took a slow breath, and reached for the manila folder. I could feel their attention sharpen instantly, like animals sensing a shift in the wind. Before I opened it, I spoke with a calmness that felt almost unnatural. "There's something I want you both to see." Sienna tried to smile. "Mom, we don't need to go into anything serious. We're family. Let's." I slid the first photograph across the table. The room changed. The air tightened. The color drained from Landon's face so quickly that it almost looked like he'd been painted white. Sienna's eyes widened, her fingers trembling as she reached for the next image. Then the next. And the next. Landon pressed against a married woman 1 hour and 25 minutes before the ceremony. Kissing her. Holding her. Intimate in every possible way. The woman's wedding ring visible. Landon's expression unmistakably confident. The look of a man who knew exactly what he was doing. Sienna's breath came out in a ragged sound, a mixture of shock and immediate calculation. She looked at him, searching for a lie, something she could defend. But there was nothing to defend. I let the silence burn them. I finally spoke. "I also overheard your conversation last week, Sienna. The one where you laughed about filing for divorce in 2 months. The one where you said you'd walk away with $15,000 from the wedding money." Her face collapsed into disbelief, not because I was wrong, but because she had been caught. I continued, my voice steady. And I checked the wedding account. All $31,000 from the gifts are gone. You opened the account 5 weeks before the wedding. You planned this. Both of you. Landon pushed his chair back from the table, his jaw clenched, his confidence stripped away. Helen, wait. No, I said, holding the final photo between my fingers. You waited. You waited until my daughter said, I do. You waited until every dollar was collected. You waited until you thought I was blind. Sienna's eyes filled with tears, not of guilt, but of losing grip. Mom, please let me explain. You used me, I said softly. You used your own mother. You used my love. You used my lifetime of work. And you thought I would never see it. Landon stood abruptly, trying to turn this moment into outrage. This is ridiculous. You're attacking your own daughter. I cut him off calmly. I'm not attacking anyone. I've simply stopped allowing myself to be your target. Sienna pushed her chair back, tears falling now. Mom, you're blowing this out of proportion. We can fix this. We can work through. No, I said. Not this time. They both stared at me confused, not because they didn't understand the words, but because they didn't understand the new woman sitting across from them. Landon placed his palms on the table, leaning forward like he had leverage. What are you planning to do? I met his gaze with quiet steel. Everything I need to. He opened his mouth again, but I calmly lifted my hand. And before you bother trying to argue, the trust is already in process. My assets are protected. My home is protected. My business is protected. You cannot touch anything. Sienna's face drained of color entirely as the realization settled in. You locked me out? No, I said. You walked out the moment you chose greed over family. I stood up from the table, my napkin folded neatly, my voice steady with a strength I hadn't felt in years. This dinner is over. Landon's voice snapped with anger. You can't just cut us off. We're your family. I walked toward the hallway. You stopped being that when you turned me into a resource. Behind me, chairs scraped, voices rose, emotions exploded. But none of it mattered. The truth was already on the table, literally and figuratively. Their plans were dead. Their control was gone. Their future benefits evaporated. I closed the door to my office, locked it, and let out a long breath. What came next would be painful. But it would also be freedom. The house felt eerily silent after they stormed out. The kind of silence that happens after a storm finally loses its power. I stood in the kitchen for a long moment, hands resting on the counter, letting the weight of everything settle in. The photographs were still on the dining table, scattered like the shattered pieces of a life I'd spent decades trying to hold together. The next morning came with no call from Sienna. No message. No apology. No screaming. Just emptiness. By the afternoon, everything began to unravel exactly the way Colin had predicted. I received a call from a distant family friend, someone who had attended Sienna's wedding. Her voice was hesitant, unsure if she should be telling me anything. But she did. People are talking, she said. About Landon. About another woman. About the money. Something is very wrong. And just like that, the rumors began spreading across Maple Ridge. Quiet whispers in grocery store aisles, hushed conversations in coffee shops, the kind of gossip that travels faster than the truth itself. It didn't take long for the cracks in their marriage to become public. 2 days later, Sienna called. Her voice was thin, frantic, nothing like the confident daughter who had sat in my dining room planning my future for her own benefit. Mom, it's all blown up. Landon isn't talking to me. He left last night and took his things. People are saying terrible things about us. I need to come over. Please pick up. I let the voicemail finish without responding. That same evening, Landon sent me a text. Not an apology, a threat wrapped in false confidence. We will challenge your trust. You can't shut us out. I didn't bother replying. Colin had prepared me for this. The trust was already legally sealed. Everything I owned was protected. And they were completely shut out. By the end of the week, I heard from someone at the Rickshaw County Bank. Not officially, not in writing, but in the low, sympathetic tone of someone who had watched too many young couples make reckless decisions. The wedding funds are gone, the banker said. They withdrew everything in separate small amounts. They were planning something. Of course they were. Their entire relationship had been a plan. The next blow came faster than I expected. I received a message from Zoe, the wedding photographer who had uncovered the truth in the first place. She wrote only one sentence. They're blaming each other now. And that was exactly what happened. Landon accused Sienna of ruining the scheme. Sienna accused Landon of cheating. They dug through each other's secrets, pulling everything ugly to the surface. Their arguments became public, loud, embarrassing. Neighbors heard them. Friends whispered. Extended family stepped back. What was once a shiny new married couple dissolved into two people clawing at each other for survival. Then came the lawyers. Sienna hired one. Landon hired two. Both expensive. Both aggressive. Both useless. The wedding account records, the photo metadata, the bank withdrawals. Everything contradicted their stories. Each new legal move cost them more money they didn't have. Within 3 weeks, they were broke. Not struggling. Not tight. Broke. Their apartment lease was cancelled. Landon moved out first. Sienna stayed with a friend temporarily. And that's when the desperation reached me. The calls began again, softer this time. Broken. Begging. Mom, please talk to me. I'm sorry. I didn't mean for things to get this bad. We're getting divorced. It's over. Everything is over. I don't have anywhere else to go. Please, Mom. Please answer. I listened to every voicemail, every cry, every tear-soaked apology. But I didn't respond. Not out of cruelty. Out of self-respect. Then, when the pity didn't work, the anger returned. You're choosing yourself over your own daughter? You think you're better than me? You just want to watch me suffer. This is your fault, you went too far. How could you abandon me? I'm your child. I sat in my living room, hands folded in my lap, breathing deeply after each message. The anger no longer hurt me. The manipulation no longer shook me. The guilt no longer reached me. Every night, I said the same whisper into the quiet air. No. Because that one word was the first real boundary of my entire life. As the weeks went by, Sienna's calls slowed, then stopped. Landon disappeared from town altogether. Their marriage disintegrated exactly the way it was built, through greed, secrets, and lies. And for the first time in decades, my life wasn't being pulled apart by someone else's demands. It was mine again. The first morning after the calls finally stopped, the house felt strangely new, as if it had been holding its breath for months and had finally exhaled. I stood on the porch with a cup of coffee, the winter air brushing against my cheeks, the snow on the driveway glistening softly under the early Wisconsin sun. For the first time in a very long time, I felt something I had almost forgotten existed inside me. Peace. Not the fragile kind that comes from pretending everything is fine, but the steady, grounded kind that grows after surviving a storm you never believed you could walk through. The trust paperwork was finalized. My home was safe. My business was protected. My savings were mine again. My life belonged to me, not to anyone's manipulation or expectation. I began volunteering twice a week at Willow Creek Senior Center. At first, it was just to fill the silence. But days turned into weeks, and the faces around me became familiar, warm, comforting in a way I hadn't expected. I found myself laughing again, sharing stories, listening to people who had also survived betrayals, losses, and disappointments. There was something powerful in knowing I wasn't alone. I bought a simple second-hand guitar and started taking lessons. My fingers fumbled on the strings, my rhythm was inconsistent, and my teacher often chuckled softly, but I kept going. Every note felt like reclaiming a small piece of myself. On quiet afternoons, I walked the nature trails behind Maple Ridge, watching the frozen lake thaw as the season changed. The trees stood tall, bare but unbroken, and I realized I felt the same. Life had stripped me, but it hadn't ended me. It had simply revealed what needed to be rebuilt. Zoe and I met for coffee every now and then, two women bound not by disaster, but by truth. She never treated me with pity. She treated me with respect. Sometimes we talked about life, sometimes about nothing, sometimes about everything. A friendship born from pain but grown through sincerity. One evening, I sat on my porch wrapped in a blanket, looking out at the snow-covered street as the sky turned pink and gold. The world felt quiet, safe, mine. And a thought came to me so clearly that I whispered it aloud. I didn't lose my daughter. I lost the illusion of who I hoped she was. But I found myself. It wasn't bitterness, it was clarity. A mother's love can be endless, but it cannot be blind. A woman's strength can be steady, but only if she chooses herself first. I leaned back in my chair, watching my breath form small clouds in the cold air, and felt the warmth of something new blooming inside me. Not joy, not relief, but freedom. A simple, quiet, unshakable freedom. Because boundaries weren't walls. They were doors. And for the first time, I had closed the door on pain. And opened one for myself. In the stillness of that winter evening, I finally understood the truth that had taken me 61 years to learn. Boundaries are not cruelty. Boundaries are survival. And survival is the purest form of love a woman can give to herself.